Ah, I had to reset my microphone. It was on, but I realized it wasn't accepting any input. So once again, I started the whole stream with no audio. But that's fixed now. But this is a good time to point out that, well, Dungeon Matron speakers may not have worked. My mic was definitely not working, so that's kind of on me. Speaking of Dungeon Matron, she is one of my patrons, and without whom this would not happen. They keep me in hot glue. So I've got Dungeon Matron, Patrick, and Digital Calibrator, and they continue to contribute each month to my little fund here, and I hugely appreciate it. So one of these days I'll actually start a video where they can hear me. And it's weird though, right before I started the video, I checked and the mic was working. And then I looked again and it wasn't. Turned it off, turned it back on, because, you know, I have an IT degree, so I do that. When I turned it off and turned it back on, it was suddenly working. So, once again, this gap in here is going to get filled with bricks. There was I put up a poll, and the majority of people voted that it should be done with regular style bricks running perpendicular to the edge. So these will be running this way. I have to start in the corners because everything's not quite going to fit. So I have to fudge some things. So I'm going to start from the corners and work my way one way or the other on one side, and then work my way around. I already know that I'm only going to be able to get to about here with that. There's going to be a gap in there of about 3 millimeters. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut a strip of foam from some of my scraps to fit in there. I will probably cut that into bricks, into brick lengths, and put those offset to the gaps. Or I may just run a straight line. But either way, it's going to make a secondary little border right here on this inner edge. And I think that'll end up looking good. But I know I'm going to end up having that space one way or the other. And I could put it on the outside edge, or I could put it on the inside edge. And I've decided to go for the inside. So for right now, I am going to put one square brick in the corner and then start my pattern across this way. I'm either going to put my overhead camera to let y'all see that, but that's going to get a little washed out. In order for me to be able to see it, I kind of need the light on over my head. I pointed like you can see me, but there's a light on over here. That may be a little washed out, so it may be better. I think I'm going to go with this camera instead. And again, thanks to all my patrons. Let me turn that off real quick. Okay, and I think that's going to be a better visual for you. So once again, I'm going to start with the little square bricks, but I'm only going to use like one to start, and then I'm going to start building up the pattern with the brick-shaped bricks, or brick-shaped tiles, excuse me. Okay. Now, I was doing this in white glue the last time because it gave me the chance to slide things around, and I knew I was going to leave it. I hate white glue because it takes forever to dry. High humidity here in Georgia and all that. But I think for tonight, I will probably do that again. I am definitely doing the first one with hot glue, and we'll see how it goes after the first couple rounds. Okay, so take a few of these squares. Hot glue gun should be hot. Let's see. One little drop on there. Doesn't take much. Okay, we're going to put that right down here, or up here, however you want to look at that, in that corner. Okay, that's one down. Only 927 million to go. Okay. Now, there's an interesting thing I've noticed. These tiles are thinner than any of the other ones I'll be using, so I will have a lip right here, and I'm going to leave it. I think it's going to look good because this one will probably end up being used as like a courtyard or a meeting area, like a public area. So it doesn't have to be level and flat, so instead of house on it. Plus, most of my houses will actually cover enough space on here anyway that even if they have a little bit of a gap where they lift up, I'll be okay with it. All right. So Now, here's the thing to consider. This brick has little divots in it that are a bit deeper on one side than the other. I like the side that's got the greater texture, so I'm going to make sure to put that up. So I'm flipping that over and putting the glue on the smoother side. You can do it however you want, but this one I want to have a little more character to it. Okay, now the way I have done this, I've already drawn those lines last week where I used it to line up where the center was. As it turns out, that is also going to be super helpful for keeping these lined up. If you'll notice, that goes directly 45 degrees and comes out right at the point on that tile. Now, I know this next one's going to have to be offset, so I need another square tile here. There's going to be a square tile every other round, every other line of tiles, of bricks, brick-shaped tiles, however you want to word that. Okay, and then this one, again, checking for which texture I like better on it. And just a tiny bit of glue. And line that up right there. Now, as you can see, this is going to make a standard brickwork pattern. And I had a request to do herringbone, which I actually could have lined up with this as well, but that was not the majority request, and it would be much, much more difficult. And to be honest, I'm trying to get this knocked out because I got like another 8 of these I got to build because I'm trying to build an entire city. I need to have 9 of the 3-inch tall ones, so 9 at this height. I'm also going to have two or three, maybe 4 of the 2-inch height. That means it would only be this tall. And I'm also going to have several of the 1-inch tall. And some of those are going to be half-sized, and some of those are going to be quarter-sized. So I've got a bunch of these left to make. Yes, I see that. I know, herringbone. I've already made the one herringbone, and it was kind of a pain. I may do that later. I have a bunch of these to work on. So at least one of them, of the half-sized ones, I've already got plans to make it entirely herringbone. So fret not. Herringbone is coming, just not this one. So from here, it gets repetitive. It's just glue, brick, glue, brick, glue, brick, and keep going. So I can tell you either what I have plans going on with crafting or what I have plans going on with the game I'm writing, or if anybody really cares, I can tell you why I was sick this morning, but it's really not exciting. But it was different than normal. I've had the cold several weeks, but today was not that. This was something entirely different. But I think I'd rather talk about crafting or game design. So whichever you want to discuss, let me know in the comments, and I will steer the discourse that direction. Okay, now, here's where I was saying there was going to end up being a gap. If I tried really hard, I can wedge some bricks in here, but there's not really room. They'd all be slightly bent, or I'd have to trim them all. So instead, what I'm going to do is use the difference in that little gap to create this groove around it. And that's going to end up having a border all the way around on this inside platform. In case anybody cares, I am using my glue gun on low temp so it doesn't melt the hot glue. I mean, melt the XPS foam. By the way, the inside of foam core is also XPS. It's just most people don't think of it that way, but it really is. So this foam and this foam are the same except for coloring and quality and density and things like that. But essentially, they're the same process to make them. Mrs. Lynn, what's that? You thought so too on them being the same kind of foam? Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that. I don't know if that's what you were meaning or whatever. But yeah, they are the same. They can both use heat to seal them together. They can both take paint the same sort of way. They both fall on the ground when I least expect. I mean, they both some foams you can't use heat to craft them because it either puts off dangerous fumes or they literally just don't react to the heat and won't cut. Some of these bricks are smaller and I'm not sure why. So this may end up being a little strange. But when all is said and done, this and those 3 smaller pieces I did on one of my earlier live streams, those all have little gaps in them, which you can see even in between here where I pushed them together tightly. And I'm going to end up filling all of that with grout. I'm just going to put on top, spread it in, and spray it with the isopropyl, and then also with some water, and maybe some water and glue, and that will look like mortar and settle into things. That will be the last thing I do after I paint, because that way the mortar will still look like mortar, and I won't have to worry about painting the mortar. I'm looking at the camera like you can see me, and we're looking at the wrong camera, but that's okay. Okay, now the trick is I need to also make sure that I am getting the same distance here. These need to align, and I don't know if you can see that, but I have gotten a little off on that. So from now on, I need to start making sure that I'm going straight across these lines here to match these center pieces. The problem is I'm doing it at an angle from my vision, and it's hard for me to see it. I need to actually be working out like this, but then I have no way for y'all to see it. So I am making do with what I got. Okay. Square brick lined up. Square brick lined up. Rectangle brick, that one's way too small. Rectangle brick lined up. And okay. As you can see, I've moved that one a little closer to being in line, and by another 2 or 3 layers right here, I'll be lined up and I'll follow that the way across. Now that may give me more big gaps in between, but as I said, I'm going to fill all that with grout and sand and anyway, so no problem. I find it hysterical that I could only find unsanded grout when I was at the hardware store. So I'm using unsanded grout, but then I'm mixing it with sand because I think it looks better. So if I had found sanded grout, believe me, I would have used it. All right, that's still just a little off. But this next one, I'll have it lined up, and from there on, the rest of the way around, I'll be more careful about that. At what I call 3-foot fabulous, I didn't make that up, it's not my term, but what I call 3-foot fabulous, a lot of people call at game height, at game table height, or tabletop height. No one's ever going to know that but me, and well, now you, because I told you. But in order to complain about it, you got to come over here and play games with me in real life, which I'm fine with, so come on over. Oh my god, he's going to dox himself. Yeah, only if you're bringing dice. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Now we're all lined up again. I approve of tea. You go get all the tea you need. I actually brought some tea down here with me, though it is not in what I would typically use as a tea glass. I brought it down in a non-breakable plastic cup because I work over concrete, and I don't want to drop my teacup and break it. So, I know it doesn't look like it, but this is my tea glass. Ooh, that would have been better warm. I don't have any way to heat it down here. Oh well. So let's take a look at what we're doing here. Okay, once again, this is one of my city block blocks. This is the lid. Just a little trick, a little tip for you. This lines up better one way than the other, so I have drawn a little arrow right here inside and a little arrow right here. Doesn't matter which side you draw the arrow on. I just made it so that these two sides would match up when I put it together, and that way when I put the lid on, it matches up exactly all the way around. So this is one of my 3-inch tall city block blocks. I can use this as a riser, a platform. I can use it like like people use the Universal Dungeon. Is it terrain? Universal Dungeon? UDT. Yeah, Universal Dungeon terrain. So I can just use this where I can sit this out and already have a scene set up on it and play that way and then move it. But one of the things when I first designed these, I accidentally discovered the fact that, oh, right, I can use it as storage as well. So if I wanted to use this for, say, to have a scene on this, but I needed pieces that come with it, and rather than worry about them falling or whatever, I can just bring it over and have them in there, set them out, and put them right back on here and use this. And then when I'm done, I can just take them, put them back in for storage, and put these back on the shelf. And these will go on a shelf just like a book. So I will be putting them off in that corner over yonder, a whole bunch of them. I have like 4 boxes of these so far. I don't mean 4 of these boxes, I mean 4 boxes of these, but I want those out of those boxes, so I'm going to put these on the shelf by themselves over there, which is why having them work for storage is perfect, because it's it puts them on the shelf, but it also puts a lot of my smaller pieces that I can put inside them on the shelf. So where was I? Let's go back to putting more bricks on here. Let's see if the overhead will work for a while. It's a little washed out, but I think you can see what I'm doing from there. Okay, line of glue, 1 brick, tile. I keep saying brick. They're not actually bricks. They're actually tiles, but you get the idea. So the pattern that we're laying out and how I'm arranging them, they're getting arranged by bricks. Now, again, I had a poll to discuss which way to do that, and perpendicular bricks, perpendicular to the edge, so that they run crosswise, was the majority choice. So that's what I'm going with. And I can't decide if putting the glue on the brick and then the brick down, or putting the glue down and then putting the brick into the glue is working better for me. So I'm kind of going back and forth with both of those. But either way, it's getting worked out. Again, I just got to make sure that I keep these lined up with these lines of previous tiles. Again, I kept saying brick instead of tile, but I mean tile. Okay. This is why I was saying earlier that sometimes, even though I generally dislike it, white glue might work better, because I could just smear the entire thing, sit them down, and then have the ability to move them. However, I keep bumping them and touching them, and that would make all of them caterwampus. I don't know what other word to use. Wonky to each other. So I'm sticking with the hot glue for now because it sets and stabilizes so quickly. And as I said before, I knew I was going to end up with this gap in here, and I'm going to fill that with a runner of probably some of these bricks cut off, and I keep saying bricks, tiles, and put them running this way, but more flush than this. So I think that if I made it one solid piece along there, it would look strange from a medieval perspective, because that would mean they had to get a really long, really skinny piece of stonework to this place and installed without breaking them, and I think they would have bothered. So now some of these are going to be a little bit too close, so I'm going to go ahead and trim that one off. And as ever, I will put that in my rubble catch basin, because waste not, want not. And I'm going to keep going. Oops, I accidentally cut one that I wasn't paying attention to, so we'll trim that off. I don't think that'll be a problem. Now on both of those, I am going to want to, oops, that's too small. I'm going to want to round those edges off so they don't look strange. So I'm just doing that with my fingernail, just pushing it so it's rounded off on that edge. And we continue on. 56. Wow. You Californians. Between Dungeon Matron being a Californian and Mrs. Lynn being a Floridian. So, Mrs. Lynn said that Floridia is not particularly chilly today. Quite warm, in fact. I know that here in Atlanta, it is not particularly cold. I know I am wearing a sort of heavyish looking jacket, but it was colder this morning, and it has actually gotten warmer during the day. Plus, as I said earlier, I'm not feeling particularly well today, so I kind of had the chills. So I am actually dressed warmer than the weather needs. For those who don't know, I am in Georgia, the American Georgia, not the Slavic Georgia. Oh, we're gonna be friendly and stick to my finger today. Okay. Yeah, I'm not liking that glare. Let's switch back to that other cam. Okay. As you can see, on this now, the one of the great things about handmade bricks is they look old and weathered and all that. One of the bad things is sometimes you end up with things like larger gaps, like this one right here. I've got a smaller tile. I keep saying brick, a smaller tile than I really wanted right here. And in order to keep it lined up, I sort of had to slide it over, and that left a larger gap. But as I said earlier, I am going to fill all that with grout later. So that is where we stand. Little square tile. Size one. Rectangular tile. Not that squares aren't rectangles, but you know what I mean. Another square tile. Make sure you keep those lined up with these lines straight across onto those tiles. The right-hand camera, this camera, instead of the overhead? Yep. Yeah, all those people that are from California and Florida and all that, I'm right there with you. To me, if it gets below about 60 degrees Fahrenheit, my blood starts to freeze. For those who do Celsius instead of Fahrenheit, 60 degrees is, hold on, I gotta do math in my head. 60 is 1.8. 1.8. 48 plus 32, that's 7. No, that can't be right. I'm gonna have to do it. I'm doing my math backwards, but 60 is not warm. Let's say it's I gotta do this backwards. I know that 40 in Fahrenheit is 100, or 40 in Celsius is 104 Fahrenheit. So 2/3 of that is going to be minus 32. I don't know. There's calculators. I can figure it out for you later. If you really want to know, I will let me know. Go onto the Discord, which, oh, by the way, I got the correct Discord link this time. The one I had before apparently wasn't working. So the one that I have on there right now should work at least for this evening. So, but if you really want to see me calculate Fahrenheit to Celsius, go on the Discord and let me know, and I will take care of it. It's hard to do right now while I'm filming. So, I don't know about 70, but 72, 74, somewhere in there would be a good sweet spot for me. I like it a little toasty. I want it just warm and just cool enough, though, that I don't feel like I'm sweating when I'm standing still. Great. Actually, tile. Anybody wants to know? Yes, that glue is hot. It's actually on low temp, but it's still toasty. Okay. Almost all the way into the corner. Okay, that is one of these 4 sides done. And I can already tell I've gotten some things misaligned because these corners should be matching this black line perfectly, and they are not. So, I am a carpenter by previous trade. I am not a mason. Sue me. Okay, now these need to start running this way. So, this needs to be another square. It doesn't look like it should, but it needs to be another square because technically it's supposed to be the end of another brick coming in this way. Or this way, but I'm trying to do all of them cross-hatched. So this side, I need to turn 90 degrees and go this direction. So we will start with another square here. Then we'll put a long one, which that should be a long one, but that gets in the way. So that should be another square. Nope, that's not right. So that's going to be wrong. We're just going to fudge it from here on. We're going to pretend these masons got paid for speed, not accuracy. Since this will be for personal use, I don't care. Then I don't care. Ooh, that one's broken. All right. Anybody crafting or herringbone in the corners? Yes. Sure. I can. No, that doesn't change. That doesn't make it better. That just makes more little triangles I gotta cut. But I appreciate what you're saying. Anybody else out there crafting, or y'all just hanging out and watching me babble on about bricks? Tiles, not bricks. Tiles. Oh, I see what I did wrong here. I forgot I need to leave that little gap. Ah, good. My glue hasn't set yet. All right, so we'll move that over that way and line that up as good as possible and continue on down that direction. All right. So, a line of glue, one square, one rectangle, and another square. Make sure they're lined up with the line across. Make sure they're pushed out to the edge so I leave this gap. And then I can go ahead and trim these 3 tiles. Save all my little offcuts because I use them as rubble. Maybe not that one. That one's a little small. This one will work. Let it go. There it goes. Keep accidentally cutting other bricks, but that's all right. It's supposed to be old and worn anyway, so I'll just work that into the final project. All good. Okay. Oh, cleaning. Cleaning is always good. We like cleaning. Why I put away that stuff at the very beginning, but not that y'all could hear me because I had screwed up my microphone, but, you know. Actually, I think my microphone screwed itself up, let's be honest. But I double-checked it, but I did not triple-check that it was working. So for anybody who was here at the very beginning and didn't hear me talking, that wasn't your fault. That was my microphone deciding, nope, we're not doing that. And I convinced it different. With the old IT trick of turn it off and back on again. Okay, some of these are too small or weird shapes, so I'm just going to shove those to the side. Go ahead and put those in the rubble bin. And grab some more regular ones. That one already is too small. And we keep going. Beaded glue. Square tile for this run. Rectangle for that one. And square one for that one. Keep these lined up with bricks this way. And keep this gap here because I know I'm going to need to fill this later. So, keeping that going around the same way. And we keep going. Yes, brick, 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 tile, 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 tile. That's the thing. Two long tiles there. Another run here. Square. Long. Square. Another run. Do two rectangle tiles there. Say that, and then I dropped it 4 times. That may be an exaggeration, but I did drop it several. Okay, there's half of that side done. As you can see, I'm keeping it lined up with these rows here, and I'm keeping that gap here. Oops, I put that one in upside down. That one's too rough on one side. I'll have to texture that with an aluminum ball later. Easy enough. Put them down, keep them lined up, put them down, keep them lined up. Yeah, me too. I wasn't sure I was going to like it on the transverse or whatever the correct term is, but I think that looks good. It is not the one I would have chosen, but that's why I put it up for a vote. So, yeah, I think it's looking great. The only trick I'm having to do is realize that some of these square tiles are a little wide and going to have to be trimmed off like this edge right here. But other than that, I think it's looking great. And once it's down and on the table, I think it'll look wonderful. All right. So I don't mind talking. I can talk about anything, but I'm just trying not to get distracted too much and just get into the meditative state. When nobody's watching, I could not. I would have already finished all this and been on to the next thing. I get very into the flow of it and quite enjoy this stuff. I know a lot of people really don't like brick after brick, tile after tile, shingle after shingle, but I don't mind it. It's the making of the tiles and the bricks that I don't really like. However, I got all these knocked out during the weeks between um, uh, live streams, and well, I should be back. So I hope so. Okay, it should be back. I hope it's back. Okay, it looks like my entire internet dropped offline for a moment. I don't know what that was about. That's never happened before. I've had issues with my Wi-Fi not connecting, but the entire internet to the house went out for a second. So I hope you're still there. I hope you're still seeing this. If not, I will come back and I will do a second stream in just a moment. Okay, good. Good. I'm glad it's back. That was very strange. I've never had the entire house internet drop off like that. It usually does that at like 5 in the morning when they're resetting stuff. I don't know why it did it at randomly 7:45 at night. I don't know. Okay, I saw the Dinky Dioramas, which thank you so much for joining. I know it's early morning on Monday morning for you. Let's see. Said, yeah, the gap is interesting. I'm going to fill it with a separate border so that it stands out as being a delineation on the square. I'm not going to leave the gap. I could fill it, just like fill it with sand and glue it in and fill that, but I think I'm actually going to end up cutting some of these lengthwise halfway again, because these started off as bricks and then they got cut down to tiles. I think I'm going to do that again and put them all in like that. So it will end up looking essentially like this from the top, though that part where it's standing proud will be gone. Time zones are an interesting thing. I was this morning early for a bit, my time early. I was watching a friend of mine who was on the same day on Sunday, his evening, as he was live streaming something. And I was telling him that on another Discord I'm on, instead of good morning or good evening or whichever, most of the time when we come into that one, we just say happy time zone because we're all over the world on that one. So wherever you're at, happy time zone. I hope you're enjoying watching me place mini bricks. I enjoy this. I know some people do not. I was just saying that before my internet rudely cut out on me. And yeah, I enjoy this part. It's the making the tiles that's kind of a pain for me, but it all needs doing, so it all gets done. Okay. Oh, it's too thick. There's that one. I'll put those off to the side for now. Those will get used on a different kind of build. And end up with another one of those weird little corners where everything has to be done with half-size bricks because weirdness. That's all right. Masons don't get enough credit because some of this stuff is kind of a pain to do. And when you're doing this with actual grout and stuff that's caustic and hurts your hands and stuff, really, Masons don't get enough credit for what they do. By the way, most of y'all probably don't know that if you're using grout, whether for a normal project like things you would normally use grout for, or if you're crafting like this, just remember that grout is both a caustic and an irritant. Always wear a mask so you don't breathe it in, and use gloves because it can actually irritate your skin. I know that I do not like having irritated skin. I know that at least one of my viewers is having an issue with some irritated skin today, but I'm not going to call anybody out. So yeah, just remember, caustic stuff and irritant stuff is no fun to play with. Breathers and masks. And breathers and gloves. This is what I'm saying. Masks and gloves. Masks and gloves. I don't know if any of y'all watch the channel Craftsman, but Craftsman even has a little song about always wear, don't forget to wear your dust mask is the actual hook. And he is not wrong. Don't forget to wear your dust mask. Don't forget to wear your dust mask. All right. Anybody just tuning in, what I am doing is filling in this gap. And I ran a poll on my channel about which type of layout people wanted. And what got voted for was having an offset, normal brick pattern, but offset to the outer border. So I am building, bricking, masoning, whichever, tiling these bricks here, like a normal brick pattern running this direction, but if you look, it's running perpendicular to this edge. So I knew already that was going to have a problem with spacing and sizing, so I'm leaving this gap all the way around the edge, and I'm going to end up filling that with multiple other little bricks or tiles laid in sideways. And by sideways, I mean in relation to these bricks. These bricks are running this direction, and those bricks will be running this direction. So I keep saying bricks, and I mean tiles, but I think we've covered that at this point. I can use spackle. I just don't. Once you've got it in there, you've got it mushed in. You still have to come back and wipe it all off with a wet towel afterwards, and you can do that. But you have to wipe it enough that I still don't want the spackle or the grout or the dust or the sand or whatever between there to be painted. So I would do that at the end, which means that the spackle, any that got left, would be left over the paint and would clearly be visible. Now, the spackle I've got is the pink stuff that turns white when it dries. So it would end up just looking like a white residue on there, like limestone has that lime leach out or anything. But I just don't want to have to mess with wiping it like that. So I prefer to use the powder, because the powder I can brush in, and then as I brush it off with just a brush or whatever, and I come by and sweep it off, then it only fills the gaps, and anything on top gets brushed off to the side. And I can then come by and spritz it with the isopropyl and some water, and it will set up like normal grout. And that's the only reason why is the residue, the worrying about the spackle residue being left at the end. Long-winded answer for I don't like it as much. There we go. The end result I want is harder to achieve with spackle. For anybody from the UK or UK centric, the term spackle is the exact same thing as filler. So if you're using polyfiller or whatever, that's the same thing as what we call spackle in the United States and Germany. It is not the same it's the same thing as drywall filler or hole filler or any of those, but it is not the same as drywall mud or texture paste. It's they set up different. One is more elastic and smoother, and the other is less elastic and a bit chalkier and rougher. They are almost the same in the final texture, but the lost track of my thought here. The spackle shrinks, so you only want to use it in smaller areas. Like, I mean, you could use it in all of these little tile gaps on this. You wouldn't want to put it in like a large hole on drywall. And by large, I mean like a couple inches. If you got a hole bigger than a couple inches, you don't want to use either of them. You want to use a drywall patch, but that's a whole different issue for a whole different type of YouTube channel. Okay, for anybody just tuning in, I am tiling in this gap. I put up a poll for which style of tile work I should put into the gap, and I got standard bricks patterning perpendicular to the edge as the majority, so that is what I am doing with these. I knew there would be gaps or a difference in size, so I'm intentionally leaving that gap. I'm not trying to fudge it and fill it up. I'm going to end up putting a piece of trim work around here, and there was an and. What was the and? Anyway, so that's what it was. But I'm having to keep these aligned. I want to make sure the bricks stay the brick pattern. They're all tiles, but the tile pattern I want to make sure lines up with these lines all the way across on the center courtyard I've already got. Otherwise, it's going to look wonky, and I'll have different amounts on different sides, and it would be more noticeable. So I'm just matching this pattern as I go. Yeah, that could easily be done. I think you'd still have enough squirt out that you'd still have to come by and wipe it with a wet towel after. But I think that it could work very well. In case for some reason my chat window doesn't appear later on YouTube, Dungeon Mansion said that she wanted to start laying bricks the way that they were done in real life, by putting the mortar, or in this case spackle, on the side of the brick before setting it in place. And I think that could work. And if you're already in that Zen mode and you're just kind of doing one at a time and plugging your way through, I think that would not be any more difficult. It's just a different way of doing it. So I think that could work. But again, for me, for the amount of that I'm trying to cover as quickly as I'm trying to cover, I think I would have too much squeeze out for my like, and I would end up having to come by with a wet towel after, and I'm trying to avoid that. That's why I don't really use spackle for this. I do use spackle on things, rather a lot, on things where the spewed out liquid on the side isn't going to matter. For example, if I'm texturing, if I'm making a small hill and it's got a rocky texture on one part of it, I will often use spackle to hold that into place, because that way if it squirts out, I don't care. I can just cover it up with grass later and it will become part of the soil. And so I do use it a lot. I just don't use it on bricks or tiles or whatever I'm doing tonight. You know what I mean? In case you're wondering why I keep looking at it so much, as I said, I'm just trying to keep these lined up all the way across here. So what I was looking at right there is to make sure this is lined up right here. Knocking stuff over. Being rambunctious. Two rows this time. Okay. Long tile. Short tile, long tile, long tile, short tile, and line them up, make sure they're lined up across the way. broken. That is fine. Okay, I have several choices here. This one's broken right here on the inside of this tile corner. I can leave it, and once I paint it, my paint's got PVA glue built into it anyway. I'm using a standard house paint, which already has PVA in it. So my base coat will basically glue that in place. Plus, I'm going to put 3 or 4 layers of coat of other colors with the dry brushes and all of that. Plus, I'll probably put a clear coat on this at the end to protect it. And all of that can hold this in place, and it will just end up looking like a broken tile, like you might see on an actual road. I could also pick it out and leave a hole, or I could potentially put a tiny piece of glue in there and push it back into place and try to hide that it's broken, or I could remove that entirely and replace it. As it is, I am just going to go with leaving it because I want some of these tiles to appear broken or worn or used or however you want to look at that. Long tile, long tile, short tile, short tile, wedge a long tile in between them. Okay. Again, keeping each of those lines lined up with the tiles on the middle section. Yeah, I agree with you. Just leave it. Make it look like it's supposed to have been there or that no one's gotten around to repairing it. I think that is the way to go. Okay. Going much faster doing 2 lines at a time. I can align everything and make it look real pretty. I'm getting toward a corner again. The corner is where everything gets a little wonky, so that's going to go a little slower, but right now I'm doing good. Long, long, short, long, short. Okay, now, I don't know if you can see this, but a lot of these are ending up at varying different depths. And I am absolutely going to leave it like that. I like the way that looks. I knew it was going to do it. I could have trimmed all these down. I could come by after the fact and take a blade and shave them all down to match and then retexture. I like the way it looks. I'm going to leave it. That's actually, it's part of the design. It is not an accident. I knew it was going to do it, and I am doing it that way by choice. Sometimes I get done with stuff and I'm like, oh, I need to fix that. This, no, it's broken correctly. Now, some of these are a little too thin, so I'm not using those for that. I can either put them back in my tile jar for using later, or I can put them into my rubble bin for using as offcuts and broken pieces later. Just however you want to do that. Okay. Now getting into this corner, so I need to start arranging for that. So we got a long one, the last full row like that. Then I'll take a short one and a long one. That's all of that row. I'm not completing that row out because I'm matching these diagonals here. Because this is going perpendicular to this edge, and if I continue the same pattern this way, it'll be running parallel, and I don't want to do that. I want them all perpendicular, as you can see I've done here. So. Now this messes the pattern up in the corner, so I'm going to put a long one and then a small one, and that's going to get me into the corner, but I need to leave this gap here, so I'm having to kind of fudge these as I go, because I know that this route coming out this side will have these set like this, to continue that gap around the edge. And like I said, I'll be filling that back in a minute. Because I will be doing that tonight as well. Now, we are on the new side. So this one looks like it should go here, but it's actually not. It needs to go here, which means I'm going to have to use another small one right here. As if that's the end of a long one coming in from the side. Then I will continue from there. I can either make this another small one here and then work it that way, but I'm going to fudge the pattern a bit and start with a long one. Now, I got to remember that I'm going to need to line this up here. So I need to make sure that these aren't like pressed right up too tight or that they aren't too far out. So I need to be eyeballing that on the way. So this needs to be small. And then this needs to be a long, but it needs to be lined up with this first row. Put that long one there. Make sure that it is lined up with this first row right here. So I have done a pretty good job on that, if I do say so myself. And we will keep working. Like I said, if I switch to herringboning it, which is essentially what I'm doing, but if I was to switch to actually herringboning it, I would end up having to cut a bunch of triangles. And I really don't want to do that. Okay. This one, I'm going to move over a little. That's going to leave a bit of a gap. I think I'm going to have to pry some of these out because I don't like how large these gaps are getting right here. So I think I'm going to pry out this one and this one. Oops, I can't do this very well on camera. This one and this one, and redo them with longer ones. Or I could just put one of my little offcut pieces in there and fill it as if it's a busted pattern and the masons came by and fixed it later. And I consider that sort of the lazy way out, and it will be the one that doesn't look like that, so I am not doing that. I am prying this one. And this one back out. And redoing them with longer ones. Now this one's longer, but it's cut funky, so I'm going to straighten that up a little. Okay. Will that look better in there? Yes, 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 yes. So we will take that one and make that a little bit nicer. Yes, it's got some gaps, but now the grout can fill it without having to put an extra tile in there. It's right here. And I need a longer one for this space as well. And after that, it should be easier to do, go out the way this direction. I don't know that I actually have a longer one out here, so that one will work. There we go. Put on a little more glue. And put that in there. Make everything line up as well as I can. And that's good. Now I left a little squirt out here. Let me wipe that off real quick before that gets in my way when it sets up. Okay, now we can go on with the rest of our brick, tile going on. Okay, so I think that came out looking all right now that I've switched out those two bricks. These two right here got switched out. I think that one's too short as well. So I'm actually going to pry one out of the other side. Now, I'm not destroying these. I'm keeping these. These will get used other places. I'm just setting those off to the side. And I'm going to take another longer brick, like that one. Nope, not that one. That one? Yep. Okay. And there we go. Now I'm thinking it looks good. Yep. That's the thing, is I was having to switch directions. So you're right. The next one was the two long ones. So that'll continue from there on. Okay, so now we're back to doing 2 lines at a time. Put on the glue. Put on the glue. 2 shorts. Tuck in a long. And then 2 longs on this side. Making sure to keep those lined up. And moving on. Yeah, and I may decide to do that after a bit. I may, but I think that it'll look fine with the grout. But it depends. Once it's fully painted, I may come back and do that. But like I said, I won't be sure on whether or not I'm going to use the grout or the or not on to fill that, or a brick to fill that, or a tile to fill that, until I have gotten to the all of it painted. Because like I said, I like to put the grout on last, so that it appears to be grout and doesn't appear to be just another painted line between the tiles. Wow, I'm getting hot glue all over myself. I don't usually do that. I'm usually pretty good about it. I'm getting stringers all over the place tonight. By the way, anytime you get hot glue stringers on anything, a lot of people talk about how to get rid of them while you're working and all that. I wait till the end, and then if I need to, I hit it with a heat gun on about medium heat and just run over the whole thing, and all those little strings just disappear. They just either shrink up and go away, or they bond to things and melt in, and you never have to worry about it. I'm actually doing 3 lines of glue this time, because I'm living dangerous. Short. Short. Long in between. Long. Long. Another long in the middle. 2 more shorts. Make sure they're lined up. I gotta be careful, because I know I'm going to leave that gap. So like the end of this short one and the end of this short one are actually going to get trimmed off. So I don't want to push this one over to match those, because then I leave too much of a gap on the other end. So moving right along. Couple more short tiles on here. Okay, that's 1 more row done. Double check they're aligned. They are. We're doing good there. We're almost done with this. I managed to get 4 lines at a time this time. Okay, I'm going to need 2 long ones. A long one in the middle on the next row. 2 long ones. Long one in the middle on the next row. And then 4 shorts. Short tile, short tile, short tile, and short tile. And I do not think that I should do 4 rows again, but I don't really have that option anyway. Make sure everything's lined up. As you can see, it's getting a little wonky there, so let's slide those better into position. All right, now those are lined up better with the cross rows this way. Long ones here. Okay, now on all these corners, I've got to make this gap work. I am going to have to put little quarter tiles in each of these spots. So I'm almost to that point, but let me finish these last 2.5 rows out here, or 2 half rows, or however you want to word that. Okay. 2 more short ones. Okay, that's it with the normal bricking. Everything else is going to have to be specialized cuts. So go ahead and get on with that. Anybody have any questions before I do that? I could make them look like broken edges. Yeah. The thin border will fill in some of that space. Then that's correct. And I'm going to do that border first. I still need to trim these 2 bricks off. Okay. As ever, I accidentally cut some other pieces. I got to get rid of those tiny little slivers I damaged. Those will go away. Those I think are too small to bother putting in my rubble bin, so those will go in my recycle bin. And get that other little piece off of here. Those 2 will go in my rubble bin. All right, now the rest of these, if I cut this in half, will that leave enough sticking up? Yes. So I'm now going to cut a bunch of bricks in half, or tiles, or whatever. Okay. Cut a bunch of these halfway so that they are different size. Now these may be a little bit too narrow, but with the way hot glue works, I can put the hot glue down in the gap and then stick these in there, and I can only push them down as far as I want, and they'll stay in that depth. So I want these to all be offset to the lines of bricks. So I don't want these to be matched like this. I want them to be matched like that. So what I think I'm just going to do is start in the corner with the half-size brick and just use that as the start of my border and go from there. Look at me. 2 birds with 1 tile. Use a bit of a shorter one there and wedge it in. You'll see what I mean in just a moment. Okay. Get a couple more of these in here and you'll see what I'm talking about. Huh. Interesting. Again, one of the joys of handmade things. They are never quite exactly how you expect them. So, I tried to offset these here like this, but they're not quite long enough. So over time, it got to the point where they matched up with a line this way again. Interesting. So I'm just going to butt them up against here, just leave enough of a gap in between them so that it looks like they have a grout line. Because if I push them too tight up against that, sort of disappears and I have to make it work. So then I'm just going to work my way around from here and see how that works. Good. That's good. I'm introducing human error into my human error. Huh. I guess you could say that's, what do they call it, method acting? I guess I'm method crafting? I don't know. Okay, so that's my little border. I think it's going to look fantastic painted up. Now, since I'm going to have this one weird little divot right here, I'm going to put, but I started in this corner going this way. I'm going to start here and go this way and literally make just a little tiny quarter-sized tile right there. I've got that one that's strange size anyway, so I will take that and you go in the rubble. You fit in my little gap. Glue in there. That in there. And that's my little error correction tile. All right. Oh, am I too far from the mic? I'm sorry. And I'm also kind of mumbling. I apologize. I've got a mic that I could attach like to my hat brim. The problem is it is corded mic. And I'd try to walk across the room and end up dragging half the stuff off my desk. So, hypothetically, one of these days, I will get a cordless lavalier mic. But today, I do not have one. I saw somebody doing that the other day. They were wearing a baseball cap instead of one of these little... I wear the little cabbie hat. And I don't really have a place to clip a mic to it, but I do have a lot of ball caps around, plus like 2 or 3 hanging on a nail over there. So I could switch cams and have that mic on there. But like I said, this one that's up here is a corded clip-on mic, and I'd end up dragging it all over everything. That way disaster lies. So maybe one of these days I'll have a wireless, and I can just clip it to my hat, and that way, no matter where I'm looking or moving, you'll be able to hear me. Okay. Put some glue down in that gap. Bring these little pieces that I cut to size. Wedge them down in there. Don't sink them too low so they sit pretty much flush with the surface. I'm going to end up having to cut a bunch of these. I can see already. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. Need probably about 20 more of those, so let's cut about 10 of these in half to get my 20. Any I don't use can go in the rubble, so if I overcut, that's good. If I undercut, that just means I have to redo it again. So let's go ahead and cut a bunch of these real quick. And that ought to do it. All right. Okay. I do have a kind of narrow spot here where I could have trimmed it, but I didn't, so we are going to wedge a thin one down in there and a thin one on the other side. And that looks like hell, so we're going to redo that. To the rubble bin with ye. The glue's not quite right, and they're set up yet, so let me fix that real quick. Okay. You too, come on, there we go. Alright, let's try to do that a different way. I try to get ahead of myself and try to be fast and not inefficient, so let's go with slow and steady again. Need another thin one for this. Don't wedge it in as far. Then I need another thin one on the other side. And that doesn't want to wedge down in the little gap. There we go. Trim off my knife here because it's got all this glue on it now. Not trim off, clean off. All right. Okay. Get a little half-size piece in there. I think that one's already broken. That'll work perfectly. We'll take that, put the glue down in there. Wedge that little one in there. Okay. Now I can continue down this third side. Looks like I'm coming up on being done, almost done with my hour and a half I allot myself, so made good time today. Got the whole border done and much of this trim work in here. So drop a bunch of glue in there and continue right on around. Again, shout out to my patrons, one of whom is watching, so let me toss that back up here again. My patrons are Dungeon Matron, who's watching the stream right now, and Patrick Walther and Digital Calibrator. Digital Calibrator is not only my newest, but also came over and helped me get my mic set up. Remember that first stream, it was really messed up and nobody could hear what I said at all. And by the second stream, I got that a lot better. And that was all down to DC coming over and helping me with that. And I hugely appreciate that. And then also became one of my patrons, which I think is fantastic. I appreciate each and every one of you. Also, Mrs. Lynn, who's watching, supports me in a million ways that I can't even express how much gratitude I have on the stream here. And I also have another person that I refer to as my minion. So far, they won't let me say their name, but one of these days I'll say their name. And they help with a lot of this stuff as well, so shouts out to the minion. And I also have a Buy Me a Coffee, and I do have one person who did buy me a coffee one time, and that is Jason, is the Mini Mason, and used to have their own channel as well, but hasn't been putting out stuff so much lately. So if you get a chance, go check out Slavko Mini Mason's stuff. And last week, I could not remember Slavko's name, but they are Slavko the Mini Mason, and they have bought me a coffee on my Buy Me a Coffee one time. So, big shouts out to all of my fans that support me and show up. All of you that have come and watched the stream tonight or whenever, you are now one of my campaigners, and I hugely appreciate you coming by. And I hope that this has been interesting and exciting to see this little cityscape that I'm building as I go along. Let me know if there's anything specific you'd like me to go back over on any of these in a future video. And if not, then I think I'm going to call it a night, and I will see you next week for another live stream when I have no idea what I'm going to be doing next week, because by then this will be painted. My other pieces will be painted. I made some things called dungeon stackers, which are these little stairs that fit together, and they're really useful. You can make cubes with them. You can make blocks with them. You can, if you have 4 of them, you can make a cube and sit it there and put one on it so it makes stairs up, and then you put another one on top so it makes a taller set of stairs. You can put them back to back and then make... Anyway, there's lots of videos about dungeon stackers, but I made several of those this week myself, and so those are going to get painted this week. And I'll probably put out another community post about those. I have no idea what I'm going to be doing next week, but I hope to see you then. And until then, welcome, campaigners. This has been Campaign Terrain. My name, as ever, is your resident basement dweller, that guy Cross. And I love you, and I appreciate you coming out. And I hope that you all have a much better week than I had a morning this morning. Love you, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.